Hi there, I'm Charlie Ramsey. I was born in 1928, December the 13th, on Main Street, where the parking lot of Food Town is present time. Out right behind the sign, we had our home. At that time, there were 5 homes on the block from Wallaceville to Canal Street, and regular West Houston, excuse me. And everybody knew everybody in town, very close-knit family. I recall when I was, must have been 8 years old, I'd go to the movie for 5 cents. When it was over, it'd be dark, and about 9 o'clock when it was over, and I'd get right in the middle of the Main Street and run all the way about 2 blocks back to my home. I was scared of the booger bears, but we had a great life back then. Dad and Mom moved to Highlands, I think, in probably 1926, approximately. Paul and Ma Ramsey moved to Highlands and lived on the, south side of the creek on the north side of Highlands in a cedar grove. That must have been in 1898. He lived there several years before he moved to Crosby on a farm. And at that time, on the corner of Riverside and Main Street, there was one big 2-story building. Mr. Stratford, that was a surveyor that laid out Highlands, had a grocery store there, and that's where everybody bought their groceries. Let's see, I remember many things. I'm trying to recollect all of them, but let's start in the early days when I had a 12-year-old bicycle route that I threw papers at in the afternoon, the Houston Chronicle. And then when I got to be 12 years old, I worked for BNC Food Market. Worked 12 hours a day and a week and 14 on Saturday. Got 25 cents an hour. And I remember the owner insisted that all the kids that were working there do all the calculation on prices. Case it would come in and he would mark the retail price on it and the amount of percentage markup he wanted on it. We had to figure the prices in each can and write them on the top with a grease pencil. In doing so, he would come back and check it was wrong, or he'd raise him, tell him to do it over again. And fresh from my recollection is he was in the meat market, and every time a little black boy would come in, he'd say, "Come here, boy," and he'd rub his head where all his little short, kinky head. "That's for luck. Here's your nickel. Buy you a soda pop." And that was a big event. Every time family came in with children, they always ran first to the market to get their nickel for soda pop. And he was very, very kind with the children.
Ray Martin.
It was there were several grocery stores in town, as I recollect. Guy Cawthorn had one where the cleaners are now in that area. And there's another one down on the south side of the railroad track where the fire station is now. But I don't recall the name of that one. There were great activities went on in Highlands. We had a Rotary Club that I belonged to, Junior Chamber of Commerce that I was president of. There were 5 of us got together and signed a $5,000 note at the bank and facilitated a Little League ballpark. We bought the poles for $5,000 and the lights, and Umberlaw Refinery at that time came out with all the electricians that installed them for me. And that was how the beginning of the Little League ballpark started. I think Artie Hart, myself, Jimmy Ezel, and 2 others signed a $5,000 note.
Chick Henriksen.
Who?
Chick Henriksen.
Yeah, Chick Henriksen. There were 4 out of the 5, I don't recall the last one, but signed a $5,000 note. We, as Junior Chamber of Commerce, we had street dances and all different ways to raise money to pay that indebtedness off. That's how the Little League ballpark got started. Mr. Kaminsky donated 7.5 acres right to on Canal Street. No, that Canal Street? Yeah, Canal. And then the Little League ballpark bought 7.5 acres from them in there, I think. So that's how the Little League got started in Highland. At the beginning, there was Highland and Alena, and one side of the railroad track was one, the other was the other. Finally, after I don't know what period of time or what year, they combined it to Highlands. So that's how the town was started. My father was a plumbing and electrical contractor in Highlands. He did most of the work, and as I grew older, I assisted him in working for him and doing different things and learned the trade. I didn't follow it, but I learned it. Everything at that time had septic tanks in Highlands. Most of them were made out of 3 55-gallon barrels or either bricks stacked up, and no sewer available. And eventually put in a ballpark back on near the river for the girls softball teams that they played in. And they were in contrast with the boys' little league. So the town has grown tremendously. When I first recollect, there were 5 houses on our block, and across the street was nothing but a big scenery beanie patch from the northbound line of the school up to Canal Street. And Mr. Ray Prince came in and subdivided that, built 2 huge, large houses on either side of the road, one for his mother and father, one for his wife and he himself. They owned a sawmill down on Cody, and I recall they had all the floor joists were 3x8s, rough timber, and my dad started to wire them when we were building it, and he got sick, and I had to drill 3 sets of two holes each through every one of them. They were 12 inches apart with a hand bit. They didn't have electrical drills back then that the common contractor used. We wired it with knob and tube, pull wires through it. They didn't have Romex at that time. But a lot of things have passed during it changed during the time. My father got ill, and I had to complete the job of putting all the boxes in and the duplex receptacles and all.
What about the canning factory?
We had a big canning factory. They called it the fig plant. Actually, the reason it was so named, Harry K. Johnson put all the east side of Highlands of Main Street all the way really over to almost the Baytown city limits, or the North Street going out of Baytown, just solid fig orchard. Well, before that, let me regress, he put in strawberries, and he had to have a way to get to the market, so he built a railroad. He called it the Interurban. He made 25 trips a day, initially going back and forth to Houston, and you paid 60 cents to ride from Highlands to Houston. You would ride into the edge of Houston, catch a bus on down to the main street. I recall that when I was 16 years old, I'd ride into Navigation Street, where the Interurban ended, and catch a bus all the way down to Main Street and catch a bus out to Holcomb. I had a orthodontist that tried to get my teeth straightened, and when I was 16, he died, and I quit. They went back to being crooked, but that's you stop and think about it. A boy 16, country boy, going into Houston all by himself was a big deal back then. Harry K. Johnson started the strawberry patch and put the Interurban in all the way to Houston to carry his produce to Houston. Then later on, he came back and planted fig trees and put the fig plant in. The process made fig jam and figs that they bottled, and we call it the fig plant, but initially that's what it was designed for, to can figs. But as it progressed, it went through the process of doing black-eyed peas, and then later on it became a pickle factory and numerous other things that they canned there, and that was one of the chief employers in Highlands. As things progressed, we saw many developments coming in. Initially on the north side, on the south side of the railroad track, pretty well developed first. They came in and subdivided that, and most of the homes were put in. And as I got involved and grew up in older age, I was responsible for putting a number of subdivisions around. Had the privilege of developing Banana Bend. There was a man in Galena Park that bought the property, and at that time there was no road all the way down to Banana Bend, just a path, and we had a Jeep. We'd take people down and sell them a lot. $100 down and $30 a month at $1,995. And I made $100 a lot off every lot I sold. And we sold them all out, and it eventually developed into a real nice recreational facility. That was one of the first developments that I did, and as things progressed in Highlands, I was able and very fortunate to be able to put in Laurie Heights, which is on the north side of Highlands, and it's 14.5 acre subdivision for mobile homes, which was one of the new things at that time. Before that, mobile homes only had rented lots. I went in and had the idea of selling these folks lots at $100 down and 6% over a period of time, and they could pay it out. It's a very lucrative business. So I developed that 14 acres, then went out into the country on 1942 and developed Apache land, which had about 50 different lots in it, and came back on, it was right off of Wallaceville on Haney Road. It was a 120 acre tract that I put in Orchard Acres 1 and Orchard Acres 2. And these were, I believe they were 1 acre tracts, if I'm not mistaken. Sold all those out, and trying to think of other subdivisions I've put in. I'm getting old and forgetful. Prairie Village, yes, in the middle of Highlands, on really down Battle Bell Road. I put in Prairie Village 1, 2, 3, and 4 in different sections, and sold these out for mobile homes, which at that time was a new innovation. Prior to that, all the people in mobile homes had to rent a space and could not own it, but this way I facilitated the ability for them to have their own home, piece of property, put in water and sewer and gas for them. We've got Dana Drive, and we've got Sherry Lane, and David Drive. After all my 3 children, I was able to get their names enshrined into history. So, Farrell, my wife told me I forgot to name her, but I named the street after my wife too. Great importance. So, but a couple of things I forgot to mention. We had a place we called it the Pea Farm. You know, at that one time it was black-eyed peas planted all over out there, and they processed them at the what we call a fig plant. But after that went away, the big building remained. It was just a big open hall, and they had called it the Pea Farm, and it was a dance hall, and they had wrestling matches out there and boxing matches. And on Saturday night it'd be a big blowout out there. I was a little young for that at the time it was in its heyday, but I still can recall the activities they had out there. And it was one of the big bright features of Highlands. So one time the CC boys came in. I don't remember, that was the early 30s that they came into Highlands and did a lot of civic work for the town and insisted on building a railroad and different things that they stayed right downtown. They had at one time that they'd come in and put a water tower. It was built, or a square building, probably, I would guess, 30 by 30 at the bottom, and it was several stories high. That's where the CC boys stayed. And we, as kids, were very astounded by watching them at work. They come in from all different over the country. At that time in the early 30s, well, they were, I guess, very, very poor in different parts of the country, and they would send the boys in on a CC, and pay them minimal wage or some kind at that time, and it might have been $1 a day, I don't know, but what the wage was. But they did civic activities, and I was very impressed with that as a child.